Part 49. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 483. 2 days later, Chen Qian almost turned into a watching husband stone at the gate of Qi Mansion, but there was still no one from the north, and he looked at Qi Heiran with red eyes. Qi Heiran said, "It's snowing in the north now, isn't it normal to waste time on the road?" Chen Qian's eyes became even redder, and he was about to cry. Qi Heiran suddenly pointed behind him and said, "Here we come." Chen Qian looked back. The street behind was empty, and there was no one there. Chen Qian rushed up and grabbed Qi Heiran's neck, shouting, "You lied to me again." Qi Heiran grabbed his hand and shouted, "I heard the sound of a horse's hooves. I really didn't lie to you. This is a horse bred in my grandfather's horse farm." "Fart, can you hear the hooves of so many horses in a racecourse?" Chen Qian pinched Qi Heiran's neck and dangled back and forth. When Chen Qian's servant saw the two masters fighting, he turned around anxiously. Seeing Fei Bai standing lazily by the side, he said anxiously, "Oh, come up and stop me." Fei Bai said indifferently, "Your young master is just playing around with our fourth master. It's okay, it's not your young master who was strangled, what's the hurry?" He casually glanced at the street, then jumped up, "Master, the guards from the mansion are here." Chen Qian turned his head to look, and found that the 2 men and 2 riders had arrived in front of them soon. Chen Qian looked at them with bright eyes. "Where are the things you brought?" The 2 guards ignored him, and went directly to see Qi Heiran. Qi Heiran waved his hand and asked, "Where is the thing I want?" A guard took out a box from his arms and handed it to Qi Heiran. Qi Heiran opened it, and inside was a package wrapped in oiled paper, and there was a layer of silk cloth inside. Before Qi Heiran opened it, Chen Qian snatched it. Eagerly it was opened, and inside was a bright yellow booklet. Because of the passage of time, the bright yellow color was slightly dimmed, but it looked more low-key and luxurious. "This is the trace left by the years." Chen Qian opened it and flipped to the back, and there was a jade seal on it. Chen Qian was overjoyed. "That's right, this is it." Qi Heiran curled his lips, waved his hands and said, "I've given you the things, don't pester me anymore." He really wanted to turn his head and leave, but thought of Fan Zijian's instructions, and brought Chen Qian back. Chen Qian looked at him warily. "What do you want to do?" "I promised Zijian that I will show him the things when they arrive, and he will take a rest in a few days. If he wants to see them, you are not allowed to hide them." Chen Qian weighed the possibility of persuading his father, and finally nodded and said, "No problem." He looked at his guard and said, "You have to ask your guard to protect me when I go back." "Who will snatch you?" Qi Heiran muttered, but he still dispatched 6 guards from the mansion to escort him back to Chen's house. Chen Qian got into the carriage and asked 6 guards to protect him. He hugged the silk bag tightly in his arms and was always nervous. He would feel better when he got home. Chen Qian ran happily to his father's study and shouted, "Go, invite both grandfather and father back." Chen Fang and Chen Sheng have been a little absent-minded at work these 2 days, and Chen Qian asked for leave suddenly. Everyone thought that something serious happened to the Chen family. He stretched his neck and probed secretly, but couldn't find anything. The 2 rushed back to the Chen mansion, took out the things to taste, and finally came to the conclusion that it was indeed an authentic work. The Chen family felt very sorry to see the words on the booklet that were restrained but strong. This is the words of Emperor Sejong's exhortation to future generations, hoping that the descendants of the royal family can guard the country and fight for the people's interests. Zhou lost half of the country. Sejong's admonition table was written by Emperor Sejong after he was in poor health and became dizzy day by day, but who knew that this thing would flow from the palace to the people, and one day it would be exchanged into the Chen family in this way. Chen Cheng didn't think too much about it. He just put things away cherishingly, and said, "Father, on my birthday, I'm going to invite a couple of friends to appreciate it." Chen Fang glanced at him and said, "It's better to keep this thing for yourself, don't take it out easily." Chen Sheng choked, "Why? This is written by Emperor Sejong. It is different from your previous copy. This thing is for the royal descendants. Can you keep it after telling it? Even if the emperor doesn't ask for it, do you dare to keep it?" Chen Sheng choked. It was as uncomfortable as if he was number one in the world but only knew it himself. Chen Sheng could only look at the baby with regret. It seemed that this thing could only be hidden. A few people didn't know that the emperor already knew that the things were in their hands, but he didn't mean to take them back. Looking at the admonitions of the ancestors, thinking of the prosperous and powerful Great Zhou 100 years ago, and then looking down at the Great Zhou under his own governance, the impact is a bit big, and Emperor Jinjian will be ashamed. Recently, the court has been relatively turbulent. Before the Chinese New Year, the emperor had a fit of anger for several officials, and there were 3 or 4 local officials who were involved. Therefore, everyone was more cautious in handling things, for fear of offending the increasingly moody emperor. This is not only reflected in government affairs, but also in the preparation of palace banquets. It's the time of Chinese New Year again. The palace began to prepare palace banquets. The Ministry of Internal Affairs planned to do the same as last year, but the emperor was not happy. Since last year, he has saved a lot for 2 consecutive years of imperial examinations. Finally, there was an opportunity to spend money above board, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs actually wanted to deal with it. So the emperor directly ordered that this year's palace banquet be held in Changming Palace. The Changming Biagong is located on the Changming Mountain in the suburbs. Because there is warm soup on it, the 4 seasons are like spring, so the emperor asked people to build a biagong on it. It took 12 years, and now more than half of it has been built, which is more than enough for holding palace banquets. But in this way, the cost will increase a lot. Where can the Ministry of Internal Affairs get so much money? The emperor thought that he was more frugal in the past 2 years, but his spending was still 10 times that of Emperor Sejong. This shows why everyone misses Emperor Sejong so much, because he is really a good emperor who is thrifty and thrifty. Well, let's get down to business. The Ministry of Internal Affairs has no money, so it can only be paid by the Ministry of Households, and the Ministry of Households is also suffering. After the Chinese New Year, spring will begin, and spring plowing and planting must cost money. Various water conservancy projects are also clamoring for money, but the palace banquet has to be held. There is no other way. We can only squeeze a little bit in each place, and the most crowded thing in the end is the money for armaments. The country has to go to war every year, and it has to replenish its armaments every year. Next year, it will be less prepared. It can't be impossible to hold a palace banquet, right? But the Ministry of War was not happy, so they quarreled with the Ministry of Households, and then some people said, why there are wars every year? Is it because the Ministry of War does not act, or deliberately delays the war? Some censors also suggested that the emperor cancel the palace banquet, but such voices were sprayed away as soon as they came out. The emperor saw that there was a quarrel in the previous court, so he took advantage of the situation and stopped going to the court. He was happy to sleep in. Anyway, the order has been issued, and the people below dare not refuse to carry it out. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 484. Chi Heiran returned home angrily, hugged Mu Yangling at night and complained in a low voice, I finally know why Dazu is in such chaos every year. The emperor pushes state affairs to Prime Minister Qin and the 6 ministries, but most of the 6 ministries depend on Prime Minister Qin face, under the evasion of government affairs, will always delay time. There is a flood in the south of the Yangtze River, and it is right here. The reported memorials are first presented to the imperial court. After the emperor sorted out the priorities, he only left a dozen or 20 letters that he was interested in, and the rest were thrown to Qin Xiang and Liubu's subordinates. But the 6 departments dare not monopolize it, and the important things still need to be approved by Prime Minister Qin before they are approved, and then returned to Prime Minister Qin, and issued for implementation after obtaining permission. It will take at least half a month for the whole set of procedures to be completed. The emperor can hide if he can, no wonder the eldest brother wants to replace him. Qi Heiran said the last sentence close to Mu Yangling's ear, his voice was so small that he could hardly hear it. Mu Yangling exhaled and asked in a low voice, "The emperor is so lazy, why does he pay so much attention to us?" Qi Heiran sneered and said, "It's not just about us, but the generals who lead more than 80,000 troops abroad are all under his surveillance." Sejong distributed the whole country's troops at the border and important passes, focusing on guarding against foreign enemies. But put the main force in various places in the country to prevent the people. This is where Qi Heiran looked down on the great Zhou emperor the most, especially the pioneer Jiaozong. He didn't understand how the steadfast Emperor Sejong gave birth to a group of soft sons. Jiaozong believed that in all dynasties, no country was destroyed by foreigners, but all were overthrown by domestic mobs, so he felt that it was the people of the Great Zhou that needed to be guarded against, and that there was no need to worry about foreign enemies. This point of view coincides with Zhao Quanggaian, the founding emperor of the previous Song dynasty. Then, the first minority regime to unify the world began with the demise of the Song dynasty. It was a tragedy for the people who were ruled by Yuan Dang as second-class citizens. Mu Yangling patted him on the back comfortingly and said, "It doesn't matter, anyway, hasn't Xieying started mining? Our armament should be self-sufficient." Qi Heiran said sullenly, "I'm not angry because the Ministry of Finance withheld military equipment. He just felt very disappointed." Mu Yangling can understand his mood. The country and ruler he thought were not what he thought. Disappointment is inevitable, but they have decided to rebel now, right? To be angry? Mu Yangling couldn't quite understand it, and was really thinking hard about whether he wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with Qi Heiran tomorrow. Who knew that Qi Heiran would wake up the next day, but he was full of energy, and nothing happened. Mu Yangling pursed his lips, so he didn't care about him anymore. The Chinese New Year was coming, and he was about to start preparing New Year's goods. Zai Yuheng followed Lu Lang around the streets, and wanted to stay and do business. The reason was, "Cousin, we have handed over all the affairs at home to the steward, and Zhongwu and Zhonglu can take care of themselves, so there is no need for us. How much? Let us stay in Linen Mansion, so that everyone can take care of each other." Mu Yangling was not very willing. They had to stay here as hostages of the emperor, but Zai Yuheng and the others also stayed here. Didn't it increase the number of hostages and make her more entangled? Zai Yuheng still wanted to act coquettishly and pester her, but Mu Yangling said coldly, "If I say no, then I won't. No amount of opportunities here can compare to life." Zai Yuheng didn't know that they were going to rebel, and she didn't understand why her life would be in danger if she stayed here, so she coaxed her eyes at Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling snorted coldly, "Do you think the business in Linen City is so easy to do? Here are the most powerful dignitaries in the world, and the wealthiest businessmen in the world. Just one person here can overwhelm you. And, here, we are hostages, no matter what happens at the border, we are tools to contain Big Brother Qi and Heiran. You stay here because you think I have not enough troubles." Zai Yuheng's face turned red. Lu Lang hurriedly took her hand. Mu Yangling continued to speak bluntly, "But it's different in Baidi, it's the general's territory. Why do you think our Mu family's business and farm can always it went smoothly? Because the Qi family is here, otherwise, we wouldn't be able to open the cattle farm alone." Lu Lang and Zai Yuheng lowered their heads. "You have to think that the business at home can already be handed over to the steward, and you can use the money to do other business. It belongs to you. As long as you don't violate the law and deceive others, you can do whatever you want." Zai Yuheng's eyes were slightly red, and she muttered, "I just can't bear my cousin." Mu Yangling sighed and said, "You are married and have your own family. Isn't that normal? Bowen is younger than you, and he can be independent. Why can't you compare to him? Mu Bowen was sad and in a daze for a while after his sister left, and then quickly adjusted. Not only did he not fall behind in his studies, but he was also able to manage the nursery in an orderly manner, much better than Ziyuheng. After arriving in Linen Mansion, he only stayed by Mu Yangling's hands for 2 days, and then took 2 guards to play in the streets and alleys. I have played all over inside and outside the mansion, and there are many places that Mu Yangling has never heard of. Mu Yangling looked at Lu Lang and said, Ziyuheng is too sentimental after all, you can make up your own mind about family matters, and don't be too accommodating to her. Lu Lang turned his head to look at his wife, and said dotingly, cousin, I know you will definitely not agree, so she just said it. Mu Yangling glared at him, you're using me as a raft. Lu Lang stuck out his tongue and ran out. Mu Yangling taught Ziyuheng a lesson, don't bully cousin Lang all the time, you can bring up such stupid things as staying in Linen Mansion. Cousin Lang is the eldest son and grandson of the family, and he wants to support the entire Lu family. Yes, you left him here because you want the Lu family to poke his heart. I didn't think so much. So I have to think more about it in the future, Mu Yangling sighed with frowned eyebrows. I had to marry early because the general wanted to be happy. Why did you marry so early? It's not too early, Ziyuheng said in a low voice, Grandma said this age is just right. Mu Yangling sighed, knowing that they were used to early marriage. Go back when the spring is over, I will let the guards escort you, and go with our company's convoy, and take care of you on the way. Won't Mr. Lu come with us? If he can pass the exam, I'm afraid he will stay and ask for an official. If he fails the exam, it depends on the specific situation. Let's talk about it at that time. Whether he goes or not, anyway, you must go after Chunwei. Ziyuheng lay down on the table discouraged, knowing that she couldn't change it. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 485. On the 7th day of the first lunar month, the Yamen opened its seal, and the emperor appointed Qi Heiran as a general of the Hangzhou garrison on the first day after he came to court, and he must wipe out the rebels in the Jinghu area as soon as possible. Not only the courtiers, Qi Heiran also opened his mouth wide, and he agreed to go back to the Northland after the new year. Why did he change to Jinghu? Afterwards, the emperor carried Qi Heiran to the harem, with high hopes, and said, all the officials on Jingnan South Road, big and small, come from Prime Minister Qin's family. I have intentions but are powerless, so I need Qi Qing to deal with them. Qi Heiran knew that his mission this time was equivalent to half a secret guard, but how could the emperor trust him to do such a thing? Qi Heiran, who couldn't figure it out, could only thank him and said, the minister leads the order. Walking with Qi Heiran, there are also the emperor's deputy to Qi Heiran, there are 3 in total, they are both assistants and surveillance. Fortunately, Qi Heiran had 3 days to prepare, and he did not set off until 3 days later. As soon as he left the palace, Qi Heiran ran to the Chen family's villa to look for Fan Zijin without hesitation. The Dark Guard reported, Your Majesty, Qi Heiran is too fearless to ask Fan Zijin for advice. The emperor laughed and said, I just like his character. He may not know that I have asked people to monitor him, but he is open and frank. It is much better than Qin Xiang's secretiveness. At this time, Qi Heiran, who the emperor thought was frank, pulled Fan Zijin to speak, and kept moving his hands, writing down questions that could not be uttered. This is the way they learned to communicate after being watched for a long time. Fan Zijin lowered his head and pondered for a while, then said, I'm afraid the emperor wants to use your hands to eradicate dissidents. When Fan Zijin spoke so bluntly, Qi Heiran suppressed the urge to look back, and just blinked at him vigorously. Fan Zijian smiled slightly, and wrote on the paper, if you can't be 70% truthful, you have to let 5% be, so that the emperor won't be afraid. Suspicion, Heiran, you are a person with flaws and selfish desires, but you are more loyal to the emperor and possess justice. As long as you handle this well, even if you are against the emperor, even if he is angry, he will not put you to death, and he will not treat you. Our affairs are in doubt. Qi Heiran was thoughtful. Fan Zijian continued, Jingnan South Road has always been the sphere of influence of Prime Minister Qin. The military generals are fine, but the local officials are all disciples of Prime Minister Qin. When you go, be careful, don't let them catch anything. Also, do things you have to think twice before you act, even if you have the support of the emperor, you have to be cautious, don't rush forward rashly. Qin Xiang has a lot of power, if he says a word in the court, if he doesn't say a word, at least half of the court will respond do as he wants, even if the emperor steps in, I'm afraid you won't be able to save your life. Seeing that Fan Zijian did not forget to apply eye drops to Prime Minister Qin at this time, Qi Heiran laughed silently. Although the military and government are separated, your task is to suppress bandits. If you want to suppress bandits, you will contact the local officials. Just look for an opportunity to fulfill the emperor's instructions. You are not allowed to find faults just to complete the task, understand? Qi Heiran nodded impatiently, looked at the second and third methods Fan Zijian wrote down on the paper, then waved and ran away. Remember to come down the mountain to see me off in 3 days. Fan Zijian pursed his lips, soaked the paper on the table into the copper basin, and the ink stains scattered in the water. At this time, the guard who was lying behind the house and listening to the corner with the receiver on the wall also carefully put away his things, and looked around. Look, seeing no one, he slowly slipped out of the villa and went to the palace to report. Sure enough, after hearing the report from the secret guard, the emperor became more afraid of Prime Minister Qin. Even an unofficial Juran knew that Prime Minister Qin had such great power, but he was kept in the dark. At this time, Emperor Jinjian selectively forgot his confidence in Prime Minister Qin when Taifu Yan and others sternly advised him, and shifted all the responsibility to the courtiers. Qi Heiran got Fan Zijian's idea, so he ran back to find Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling's belly was already showing, and he was walking in the small garden upright, and when he saw Qi Heiran coming back, he burst into a big smile. The gorgeous smile like a spring flower made Qi Heiran's nose sore. He stepped forward and touched Mu Yangling's stomach, and said, Aling, master is leaving the capital. Mu Yangling was stunned, his heart filled with sadness, and a smile appeared on his face. Are you going back? That's okay, I can help you, brother. Qi Heiran shook his head, said with tears in his eyes, it's not going back to Jingzhou Mansion, but to Hangzhou. Hangzhou. Qi Heiran nodded. The emperor appointed me as a general in the Hangzhou garrison, and asked me to exterminate the rebels in Jinghu. The Jinghu area has always been the largest grain production base in the country. How many rebels can there be in it? Where are the original generals? Qi Heiran curled his lips. The previous generals were executed for concealing the news of the rebellion. The Jinghu area now has the most rebels in the Great Zhou. The officials forced the people to rebel, and the local officials colluded with the army to conceal the news. Otherwise, the rebellion data as soon as it is reported, everyone knows that there is something tricky in it. Because the water and soil in the Jinghu area are good, and it is mostly plains, the population density is smaller than that of the south of the Yangtze River. Therefore, the agricultural economy has been developing well. It is far away from the border and there is no war. Normally, the people here should live well, as long as they are not there is no way out, and few people are willing to rebel or become bandits. Therefore, there are so many rebels in Jinghu, and everyone knows that there must be tricks in it. Therefore, the local officials colluded with the military camp, concealed the number of rebels, and secretly sent troops to rehabilitate them. Years ago, they were accused at this time, and the emperor was furious. While dismissing many military officers in the general camp, he sent the censor to investigate the details. Chi Heiran said disdainfully, "Those censors went to Jinghu Lake for a year, and when they came back, they only said, 'The people are unruly and disobedient to discipline.' We are not fools, so naturally we wouldn't believe it." Chi Heiran said in Mu Yangling's ear, "The emperor is also strange. He used to have no doubts about Prime Minister Qin, even if someone risked his life to tell him that Prime Minister Qin was going to rebel, he would not believe it, but now he doubts Prime Minister Qin. Before he said anything, he was able to suspect everything on Qin Xiang. This time I went to Jinghu Lake, I am afraid that I will be his pawn and help him clean up those people left by Qin Xiang." Mu Yangling immediately grabbed his hand and said, "Will many people die?" Chi Heiran patted her hand and said, "Those people are not innocent. I know that most of them died without guilt, but there are always innocent people among them. Be careful when you do things, and don't involve passers-by. Just think of it as accumulating blessings for our children." Chi Heiran stroked Mu Yangling's belly, nodded slightly, but Mu Yangling hugged him again and said, "But the most important thing is to keep yourself, no one is more important than you, so just treat me as selfish." Chi Heiran couldn't laugh or cry, could he be so noble in Aling's eyes? He definitely wants to protect himself first, he is not General Yuan, he has no courage to sacrifice his life to protect others, this is an officialdom, not a battlefield. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 486. Mu Yangling asked people to move things to the car. These were gifts she brought to her family. Bowen and Ziyuheng were reluctant to part with each other. Mu Yangling patted their shoulders and said, "Okay, get in the carriage quickly. If you don't leave, you won't be able to make it to your accommodation tonight, and the caravan is still waiting." Zhu Liang asked people to carry 3 bags of rice seeds, and put them on the innermost side of the car under Mu Yangling's signal. Zhu Liang said, "Fourth Grandma, I have already wrapped it with oilcloth. As long as the bags are not damaged on the road, everything will be fine." Mu Yangling asked Bowen to pay more attention to these 3 pockets. "When we arrive in Xingzhou Prefecture, we will hand it over to my uncle and let them split a piece of land for another experiment. I have written the specific method in the letter. Sister, last year my uncle and his experiment didn't seem to be very good, and that piece of land even failed." Bowen looked at Mu Yangling worriedly. Mu Yangling said with a smile, "Experiment, experiment, there are successes, and naturally there are times of failure. There is nothing wrong with it. Sometimes the experience of failure is more valuable than success. When you go back, pay more attention to the experimental fields of your cousin and the others. Where the money is needed, make up for it in time, and no matter where the money is short, they can't be short." Bowen nodded thoughtfully. Mr. Liu has very few things, only a letter and a small package to ask Bowen to take back. After you go back, let your father choose a new husband for you, and you must not relax your studies. Mr. Liu's Chunwei name fell to Sun Shan. Originally, he wanted to wait another 3 years to continue, but the news he got from the same department was not optimistic. The last time the imperial court pushed Chunwei to last year due to disasters in various places, is it possible to do so next time, or even cancel the imperial examination directly? Mr. Liu waited for a long time, and finally decided to stay in Linen Mansion to see if he could get an official position. Of course, he can't ask for it by himself, such opportunities are limited after all, so he can only rely on the Qi family, which is his only way out. Fan Zijin, who passed Chunwei smoothly and became one of many Jinchi, went to the small courtyard to find Mr. Liu after a few days of observation. The two locked themselves in the study for a long time to discuss, and when they came out, both of their faces were very satisfied. Fan Zijin asked Yanmo to send some things to Mu Yangling, and said, Fourth Grandma, our young master said that he has already taken care of Mr. Liu's affairs, so there is no need for Fourth Grandma to worry about it. Mu Yangling nodded and told Yanmo to step back. Li Chun smiled and said, Fourth Grandma can rest assured now, I'm afraid Biao Gongzi has already found a job for Mr. Liu. Where is it so easy to find an errand? Write to Bowen and the others after the matter is settled, so that they don't rejoice in vain. By the way, where are they now? Li Chun calculated the itinerary in his mind, and said with a smile, I'm afraid I will arrive at Sinyuan Mansion in 2 days. Li Chun had just finished speaking, and seeing the fourth grandma in a daze, she sighed slightly. Since the fourth master left, the fourth grandma has often been in a daze like this. Before the uncle and the young master were there, they could divert their attention. The days are getting worse day by day, and sometimes I sit by the window for most of the day. Li Chun was secretly anxious, looked at Guyu. Guyu smiled and said, Fourth grandma, let's go and see the second young master. Wen Kui said that the second young master was able to walk 2 steps yesterday. Mu Yangling's eyes lit up and he smiled sincerely, so fast. Let's go and have a look. Li Jinghua was putting his son on the couch, holding his little hand and letting him walk forward slowly. He was facing the door, and when he saw his aunt coming in, he stretched out his hand to hug her, and Li Jinghua patted him lightly. Touched his butt, your mother loves you so much, why is she pestering your little aunt? Mu Yangling smiled and picked him up, kissed him and said, because I kissed my aunt, didn't I? Xiao Bao also wetly bit Mu Yangling, and after a while, her face was covered with saliva, and Mu Yangling laughed loudly. Li Jinghua smiled and shook her head, you, put him down quickly, you have a big belly yourself, what if he kicks you? Mu Yangling put Xiaobao on the couch. He looked down at the toy between his legs, then raised his head to look at Mu Yangling's stomach, and finally stretched out his little hand to touch her stomach with some fear. Take it, Mu Yangling looked funny, let him explore carefully. Sister-in-law, did elder brother give Xiaobao a name? Li Jinghua shook his head, he said to wait for the child to be 3 years old before taking it, and give him a nickname first, so that it will be easy to support. Li Jinghua touched his head and said, I also think it's better to wait until the child is older before giving him a name. Thinking of what Li Shun said in the past 2 days, she waved the servants in the room to go out, and there were only 2 sisters-in-law and Xiaobao left in the room. Aling, you have been in a daze these days, are you worried about 4 uncle? Mu Yangling lowered his head and said nothing. He has been on the battlefield so many times. Jinghu is mostly a rebel bandit formed temporarily, which is much worse than the barbarians. You don't have to worry too much. Mu Yangling leaned slightly on the pillow at the back, and said, I'm not worried about the war, as long as you give him some people, he can always survive, but the situation in Jinghu is complicated, and various forces are entangled, so I will afraid. For the past 2 days, Jinghu Lake has been calm, but it is because of the calm that it seems abnormal. Chi Heiran has been gone for more than 3 months, how could he not react at all? With his temperament, she was worried that he would make a mess before, so she told him to take it easy before leaving. Fan Zijian even ran down the mountain to temporarily teach him how to become an official. I don't know whether it was their orders that made him turn things around, or something happened in Hangzhou. In short, he didn't make a fuss after he got there, which is really not in line with his style. If Mu Yangling hadn't received a letter from him every few days, she would have thought he was missing. She was worried about Chi Heiran, but she couldn't ask directly, why didn't you cause trouble over there? I don't know if their letters were monitored by the emperor. If they were monitored, the emperor might think that she was afraid that the world would not be chaotic. Li Jinghua didn't know much about Chi Heiran, so she asked in a daze, isn't it okay that 4th uncle didn't cause trouble? It is our ideal requirement for him not to cause trouble, but if he really does not cause trouble, that is a disaster in itself. Li Jinghua immediately felt a little sympathetic to fourth uncle. How distrusted by Aling, she whispered, "You can tell me these things, but don't tell fourth uncle, he will be sad." Mu Yangling curled his lips, so he wouldn't be sad, he would just jump up and refute. Obviously, there are many people who have the same idea as Mu Yangling, not only Fan Zijin, but even Qi Ziyuan, who is watching from afar in Jingzhou Mansion, can't help but feel worried, making people pay more attention to the situation in the Jinghu area. And many people in the court are also watching in secret. Everyone knows that the Jinghu area is the sphere of influence of Qin Xiang. In the past few months, the emperor has suddenly reprimanded Qin Xiang many times and replaced Hangzhou generals. Not only is Qin Xiang popular feeling anxious, even Taifu Yan's family was worried. But Qi Heiran went there for 3 months to suppress the bandits honestly, and did not do any unnecessary actions. Seeing that the palace examination is over, he has been there for 4 months, and the spring plowing has also ended, so everyone put down all their worries. When he was heartbroken, an urgent document flew into Miyagi from Jinghu. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 487. Fan Zijin successfully passed the imperial examination and was preparing for the examination of the concubine, but at this time he could no longer care about the examination, and rushed directly to the Qi mansion to find Mu Yangling, and shouted in a broken voice, "Haoran has caused a catastrophe." Mu Yangling put down the apple in his hand and asked, "What did he do?" Li Jinghua rushed over in a hurry, and cut off Fan Zijin's words. "Zijin, if you have something to say, speak slowly, what's the rush?" As he spoke, he stepped forward to support Mu Yangling, patted her on the shoulder and comforted her, "Don't worry, they just like to make a fuss." Fan Zijin's complexion changed slightly, he glanced at Mu Yangling's stomach with a complex expression, took a deep breath, took a step back and said, "The Jinghu rebels attacked the government on a large scale, Heiran led troops to fight with them, and now they are at a stalemate. The policy given by the Central Committee is to exterminate the bandits, but now he tends to resettle the bandits and recruit rebels, and many people in the court are impeaching him." Mu Yangling looked at him suspiciously, "Really? That's not a disaster, what are you in a hurry for?" Fan Zijin broke into a smile and said, "Haoran has a quick temper, isn't he worried that his writing is too tough?" Mu Yangling took a deep breath and said with a straight face, "I'm in good health. As long as he didn't die in the battle, I wouldn't be able to bear it. Tell me, otherwise, I can always find out when I go out. Should I be more angry?" Li Jinghua was secretly worried, and said with a smile, "You guys have too little confidence in fourth uncle. I think he is just going to suppress the bandits, what trouble can he cause? Ling, your belly is already 8 months old, and the most important thing is to have a safe pregnancy." Mu Yangling only looked at Fan Zijin. Fan Zijin stood there dripping with cold sweat, deeply regretting that he was too impulsive to come here, but seeing Mu Yangling's persistence, he finally gritted his teeth and said, "The rebels are attacking the government. The Yamen and the counties, the prefects of Hangzhou and Yangzhou, and the 5 county magistrates under their jurisdiction were all captured and beheaded by rebels, and none of their family members survived. Now there are 130,000 rebels in Jinghu. Jizi asked to recruit the bandits, remeasured and distributed the land, and asked for relief food from Jizi. Now the court is in a turmoil, and many people impeach Heiran, saying that it was Heiran's instruction that the rebels were able to kill the magistrates of 2 prefectures and 5 counties." Seeing Mu Yangling's calm face, Fan Zijin continued, "The key point is that they have produced evidence that it seems that the Hangzhou army is really guiding the rebels. If this is true, Heiran's life will definitely not be saved. But there are 7 families, old and young, and 3 of them are not weak. After today, I'm afraid there will be more evidence of impeachment." Li Jinghua didn't expect the matter to be so serious, so she sat down on the chair for a moment. "No, fourth uncle couldn't have done it, could it?" No, Fan Zhaijin and Mu Yangling said in unison. Seeing that Fan Zhaijin believed Qi Heiran, Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief, and said, Heiran is not those people. They are all bad guys. With Heiran's character, he would not do such a thing. Fan Zhaijin nodded again and again. Besides, Heiran is surrounded by someone from the Holy One, so it is impossible for him to do such an unharmonious thing. Fan Zhaijin's eyes lit up when he said this. Yes, there is someone from the Holy Master by Zhaijin's side, that Zhaijin can be washed clean. He was relieved and smiled calmly. It seems that the Emperor's sending deputy to Heiran is not completely useless. Mu Yangling was not so optimistic. Then why didn't he write to us? Didn't it mean that his argument has come? Fan Zhaijin suffocated for breath. Li Jinghua's hands and feet went limp, and his face turned pale, and he asked, You mean, this matter was ordered by the Holy Majesty? Then Qi Heiran can only bear the blame. Mu Yangling lowered his eyes, shook his head and said, Anyone is possible. Maybe Qin Xiang used a knife to kill people to silence his mouth, and shot 3 birds with 1 stone to squeeze out the power of the emperor and the Qi family. It's also possible that Qin Xiang's political opponents did it. It can not only make Qin Xiang lose his manpower, but also make him and the emperor suspicious of each other, and get rid of Heiran. Fan Zhaijin quickly picked up Mu Yangling's thoughts, and he sat aside. He pondered on the chair, and finally said, The most important thing now is to find out how much Heiran knows about this matter, and then ask people to collect the guilt of these 7 people, so as to suppress public opinion as much as possible. Mu Yang's face sank into the water. No matter what, Heiran can't admit it, otherwise, he can guide the rebels once, and he can guide the second time. As long as someone mentions this, he will not live, and even the whole Qi family will die. Will be pulled in. At this time, Fan Zhaijin couldn't help but doubt, the emperor sent Heiran to Jinghu really because he wanted to get rid of his eldest cousin, otherwise, how could someone make such a mistake under Qi Heiran's nose? Mu Yangling got up and saluted, Zhaijin, I'll leave everything outside to you. Fan Zhaijin waved his hand indifferently and said, We brothers don't need you to say it specifically. You should take care of yourself first at this time, and don't let Heiran be distracted outside. Mu Yangling nodded in agreement. At this time, her stomach is already 8 months old, and she will give birth in more than a month. The most important thing is to take care of herself. Li Jinghua handed Xiaobao to Mu Yangling the next day, and began to go out to engage in diplomacy instead of the Qi family. He had to find out more news and the attitudes of the officials, and get more people from the Qi family to have a better attitude towards Qi Heiran. Mu Yangling also went out with Li Jinghua a few times with her big belly. Everyone felt a little sympathetic to her when she saw her big belly, but it saved Qi Heiran a few impeachment papers. But this is insignificant in the snow-like impeachment. While waiting for Qi Heiran's further debate, the atmosphere in the court has repeatedly burst to boiling point. The hall was bleeding, and the next day the censor took to the street with a white cloth wrapped around him, very proud. Fan Zhaijin almost couldn't bear to ask someone to ask for his sack. Mu Yangling's face was almost paralyzed now, and he only gave orders with a sullen face all day long, and didn't talk much. Is there still no letter from 4th Master? Li Chun shook his head. Young Master Biao sent a message, saying that the court has not received any arguments from 4th Master. Mu Yangling sighed, I'm afraid that he will be caught now, and the charges will be settled when he finds time. What about the 4th Grandma? Mu Yangling smiled wryly. If they knew more about the situation, they could refute the rumors first or find someone to intercede for Qi Heiran. The most important thing is that this matter is almost blocked now, and they can't get more information at all, and Fan Zhaijin sent to the people from Jinghu haven't sent a letter yet. Mu Yangling now only hopes that the 7 people are the heinous people, preferably officials who force the people to rebel, so that they can explain why the rebels stormed the mansion. As for evidence such as Qi Heiran's instigation, they can always be found. Evidence goes back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 488. Chi Heiran looked coldly at the former adjutant kneeling at his feet, without saying a word. Deputy General Zhong led people to surround the former adjutant, and only waited for Chi Heiran's order. In the basin, 3,000 soldiers held torches and looked towards the side silently. The situation was about to explode. Standing behind Chi Heiran, Lin Fuguan hesitated for a while, but couldn't help leaning into Chi Heiran's ear to advise, "General Chi, the former adjutant is also following orders, please be lenient with the general." Vice General Zhong, who was standing not far from Chi Heiran's side, raised his eyebrows slightly, and was a little surprised. The rebels who stormed the mansion were really led by people from the court? When Chi Heiran heard this, he was furious. He stared at him with wide eyes, and roared in a low voice, "Be lenient. There are 130,000 rebels in Jinghu, don't you dare to kill them all? We only have 3,000 people, are you going to let us be crushed into meat paste, or are you trying to contain all the troops in the southwest and central China here? Stupid." Adjutant Lin's face turned red, but he couldn't say anything to refute. They also obeyed orders, but Chi Heiran didn't know if he was scolding the emperor. Chi Heiran lowered his head to look at the former adjutant, with a stern look on his face. He said, "I will not pursue this matter for the time being, but if you continue to disobey orders and act privately, I will take you to sacrifice the flag." Adjutant Yuan and Adjutant Lin looked at each other and bowed their heads in response. Chi Heiran snorted coldly and asked, "Where is Adjutant Ye who came with you?" The three adjutants were sent by the emperor to watch over him. Chi Heiran also knew that they had their own missions, because the three were not military generals, and he never thought of dispatching them. Such a big deal. Adjutant Ye has returned to Beijing to report. A cold light flashed in Chi Heiran's eyes, and he didn't even notify him when he returned to Beijing. It seems that he was too generous to them before, so that they all forgot that he is now their direct superior. Deputy General Zhong's eyes flickered slightly, and he looked at Chi Heiran with sympathy. Chi Heiran pretended not to see it, and waved his hand to General Zhong to tell everyone to bury the pot for cooking, rest here for the night, and head to Yangzhou tomorrow. Chi Heiran returned to the tent, sat at the table for a while, and finally picked up a pen and wrote a letter to Mu Yangling, writing down everything he knew, and asked her to find a solution with Fan Zijian, because he was thinking hard. For several days, there was still no good way for him to get rid of the suspicion. If someone else did this, he would definitely be able to drag him into trouble without even thinking about it. Who dared to plot against him? But the emperor is behind this matter. If it is really exposed, the officials in the world will be panicked. A king can behead corrupt officials with justification and evidence, and he is also willing to kill the unreasonable emperor in his anger. He can even kill people for no reason. With integrity and a dark heart, officials all over the world still have to worry about it all day long. So the blame is either those rebels or Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran himself was not taken advantage of, so naturally he would not take the blame for this crime selflessly, so he could only try his best to push the matter to the rebels. But these stupid lieutenants accidentally left traces. How to explain and how to eliminate these evidences has become his most troublesome moment. Chi Heiran was spurning himself while writing. He wanted to rebel, but before the rebellion, he had to stand so firmly with the emperor and devoted himself to shirk his guilt. Emperor Jinjian was still playing in the harem at this time, and called a few concubines to play in the pool together. The inner eunuch lowered his head and came to report that there was an urgent document. He fumbled honestly, and said indifferently after hearing the words, "Put it in the imperial study first, and I will go there later." The eunuch knew the emperor's character well, and knew that he would be angered if he continued speaking at this time, so he stepped back very obediently. The emperor hugged Changzhe and kissed him big, and said with a big smile, "The beauty is really delicious." After the emperors for a while, the sky was already dark. After dinner, he went to the imperial study room Shi Shiren. When he saw Adjutant Ye still kneeling in the imperial study room, he frowned slightly and waved, "Get up." Adjutant Ye reported the situation in Jinghu, and finally asked, "Your Majesty, now those rebels are filled with righteous indignation and are heading down Yangzhou. I am afraid that the subsequent county officials and prefects will also be affected. I am planning to take people to protect those government offices and county towns. Qi Heiran only has 3,000 people, can he fight against 130,000 people? There are also garrisons in all government offices and counties." The emperor snorted softly, and said, "If they do something, the rebellion in Jinghu will not last for 3 years without stopping. Instead, it will become more and more prosperous, and now it has reached 130,000. The emperor was annoyed, "Let them make trouble, and when those bandits clean up the corrupt officials in Jinghu Lake, my army will also surround them." Then, Adjutant Ye asked hesitantly, "What will General Qi do?" The emperor smiled and said, "Don't worry, there is no definite evidence, and no one can do anything to him. This kind of thing will end up in a daze. By then, everyone will be busy suppressing the rebellion. Who will pay attention to this? If the court officials, if you are not convinced, Qi Heiran's official position will be slightly demoted when the time comes, and I will compensate him later. You don't need to talk too much this time when you go back, just pay attention to his actions in secret." Adjutant Ye bowed his head in response. After Adjutant Ye left, Eunuch Bai made tea for the emperor, and asked suspiciously, "Your Majesty, there have been more and more reports on the impeachment of General Qi, can this matter really be suppressed?" The emperor snorted softly, and said, "Most of those excerpts were ordered by Prime Minister Qin. As long as I tell Prime Minister Qin, would he still dare to disobey the emperor's order? Let Qi Heiran attract everyone's attention again, and wait for the troops from the southwest and central regions to arrive. Let's talk about Jinghu." But Eunuch Bai was a little worried, afraid that things would exceed the emperor's expectations. After all, the emperor was always prone to make some mistakes when he decided to do something alone. The emperor didn't know about Eunuch Bai's worries. He was taking a look at the list of the newly admitted Shujishi, and he roughly finalized the list of newly replaced officials in his heart. They all put on their own people. At this time, Qin Xiang was also making arrangements, ask someone to bring back the account books and write them off. For the new recruits this year, you should find some poor and innocent people, contact them secretly, and help them as much as possible. Don't mention the truth, just let them think that you are sympathetic with them and win them over. Qin Xiang, didn't we like to choose children with family background before, why this time? That's because it was easier for children with family backgrounds to stand out, but now the emperor is suspicious of me, and he wants to replace him with his own people. Naturally, those poor children with no roots are more useful. Qin Xiang sneered, let he thinks those people are his people, I don't mind lying to him for another 10 years. Qin Xiang thought to himself. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 489. Fan Siwen sat in the flower hall with a cold face, and when he saw Fan Zijian walking straight forward, unable to even look sideways, he yelled, "Nizai, you still know how to come back." Fan Zijian turned to look at him wearily, and frowned slightly, "What do you need from me?" Fan Siwen looked at him disappointedly, "You have studied hard for more than 10 years and finally passed the palace examination, but you gave up the test for a good scholar. Do you know the rule that non-scholars are not allowed to enter the Imperial Academy, and those who are not in the Imperial Academy are not allowed to be a prime minister?" Fan Zijian sneered, "Father, when did you become so naive? Those are just rotten rules summed up by literati. Among other things, here is a living example today. Is Prime Minister Qin from Hanlin? He is not the same, it's the Chancellor. You. Besides, when did I say that I would be a butcher for an official? Fan Zijin originally wanted to go home and rest. He had been running up and down for Chi Heiran for the past 2 days, and he was almost exhausted. Fan Siwen, on the contrary, didn't feel sleepy. If he wanted to rest here, he still couldn't sleep well. Thinking of this, Fan Zijin turned around and left, leaving Fan Siwen staring at his back in anger and disappointment alone. He didn't understand why his amazingly talented son liked to surround that kid from the Qi family. If Fan Siwen could still love Qi Heiran like a nephew in the past, now all he has to do is vent his anger. Only Jinchi of the current subject can take the Shujishi examination, and only candidates who have passed the Shujishi examination can enter the Imperial Academy together with the top 3 in the palace examination. There is hope of worship. Fan Siwen was good at studying back then, but he didn't get into the Shujishi, but Fan Zijin's ranking was good, and with his ability, he probably could, but because of Qi Heiran, he delayed the exam time, so he simply didn't take the exam. If he said he didn't want to take the exam, who would he lie to? Then why did you sign up? Fan Zijin, who ran out, finally went to the other courtyard on Kixia Street, found a room at random and went to sleep. When he woke up, the sun had already passed the mid-heaven. Grandma is here and she is sitting in the courtyard next door. Did 4th Master have a letter? Yes, it was delivered quickly, and the 4th Grandma came over as soon as she got it. Fan Zijin turned around and went out. Yan Mo hurriedly followed. Master, let's eat something before going over. Fan Zijin waved his hand and asked someone to open the side door and go directly to the small courtyard next door. Mu Yangling was writing his plan on the desk. When he saw Fan Zijin coming in, he showed Qi Heiran's letter, and then waved for Li Shun to go. He took some food from the kitchen and continued to write plans at his desk. Li Shun walked around the kitchen, and finally brought Fan Zijin a bowl of meat porridge. Fan Zijin ate the porridge with one hand while reading the letter with a cold face. When he finished eating the porridge and the letter was finished, he wiped his mouth and said, "This scapegoat cannot be blamed on Heiran. He is right. If he takes this scapegoat, he will never get rid of his sinister and vicious reputation. If he is not mentioned at that time, even the eldest cousin will not be able to bear it. With such a sinister younger brother, Qi Ziyuan still wants to fight for the big position? I'm afraid no one will believe his character. After all, Qi Heiran was brought up by him." Mu Yangling showed him his plan and said, "So the first thing to do is to collect the criminal evidence of the 7 people, and calm down the public opinion first. Only when there is a second voice, or even more dissent, can everyone calm down and think about the reason, and buy more time for Heiran. The second thing is to find someone to let the wind out. Whether it's someone who wants to kill people to silence them, whether it's a vendetta, or the gangsters can't stand the oppression and anger to kill people, in short, first muddy the water." Fan Zijin nodded, rubbed his hands together and said, "Maybe we can guide everyone to think about the real murderer on a small scale." "No," Mu Yangling said, "Heiran doesn't want to drag the emperor into trouble, and I'm also worried that if the emperor is involved, he will throw away his car and protect the commander. If he says a word, Heiran may be convicted." Fan Zijin froze, quickly restrained his mind, and said, "You are right, this matter cannot involve the Holy One." He thought for a while and said, "These are all trails, and Heiran has to hurry up, at least get the evidence of those officials who have corrupted the law, so that it will be more convincing. It seems that I have to visit a few people from Yashitai grown-ups." Fan Zijin touched his chin and said, "Isn't eunuch the Yashi Zhongchang?" He. Fan Zijin waved his hand and said, "You don't have to think about it. I begged him 4 times, but my uncle just kept pushing. He hasn't been to court for 3 days. I guess he was afraid of getting involved." Mu Yangling was discouraged. She didn't expect her father-in-law to be so fearful. After all, Chi Heiran was his son. His son was being bullied outside, and he didn't even have the courage to say a word. Fan Zijian did not have Chi Feng's help in court, and he himself was not qualified to go to court, so he could only find contacts from the past. Even his father was found by him. This made Fan Siwen extremely depressed. They just quarreled this morning, okay. Fan Siwen didn't know whether to call him brazen, or to praise him for being a big deal and being careless. Anyway, the next morning, Chi Heiran's second argument came. He explained again that he did not order anyone to lead the bandits to attack the mansion. As for the evidence collected by the officials, he was also puzzled, so he asked the emperor to send someone down to investigate. And those officials who have evidence should explain the source of the evidence clearly so as to return him innocent. At the end of the excerpt, he asked the courtiers that he had no grievances with those 7 people. He didn't even know these people before he went to Hangzhou. I haven't even met other people, so why do you want to instigate bandits to kill them? Moreover, he is still destroying the whole family. He, Chi Heiran, thinks he is frank and upright, and he dare not say he is a gentleman, but he is definitely not a sinister and vicious villain. How much hatred is there that the whole family will not let it go? There was even evidence that could be detected by others. Chi Heiran thought that someone had framed him, so he asked the emperor to return him innocent. Chi Heiran wrote that he was filled with righteous indignation and his words were agitated. In the excerpt, he even swore a poisonous oath, saying that if he did such a thing, he would be struck by lightning and the whole family would die. This oath is too vicious, so the officials who had been boiling unanimously demanding that Chi Heiran be punished slightly calmed down a little. Thinking along Chi Heiran's way of thinking, Chi Heiran did not have the motive to kill, because as he said, he had a relationship with this person before. The 7 people had no contact, let alone any grievances, and after arriving in Hangzhou, they met the Hangzhou magistrate twice because of the bandits' oppression, and then devoted themselves to leading the defenders to encircle the bandits. These are all available. The bandits suddenly stormed the mansion one night, and spread to Yangzhou in the next 2 days, killing the entire family of the 7 officials. No one knows why they suddenly wanted to kill the entire family of the 7 officials, and they concentrated on those few days. However, there is evidence that before the accident, people from the Hangzhou garrison sneaked into the city to meet people, and an official was reported that the person who connected was the bandit who participated in the massacre of a county official under the prefect of Hangzhou. That's why everyone pointed their finger at Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran is the leader of the Hangzhou garrison, okay. If you don't impeach him, who will you impeach? The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 490. Surrounding Chi Heiran's excerpt, the ministers quarreled again. Although there were still some people who impeached him unwaveringly, the situation was better because some people had raised doubts. And within 2 days, Chi Heiran found some ledgers and brochures as well as some land title deeds and shop contracts from the murder scene. He sent all the things to the emperor's case, and copied 2 copies and sent them to the Ministry of Punishment and Yushitai. They said, "What is the crime?" Ask Yushitai again, "How do you supervise?" If there is only one person, Chi Heiran has sent evidence of 7 people taking bribes and breaking the law one after another. In addition to accepting large amounts of bribes and bribing people, there are also cases of driving away farmers, seizing land, and even robbing money and killing people all over the house. It all happened, none of the 7 families had clean hands, and the least one that could be found was responsible for 12 lives, which fully demonstrated to the civil and military of the Manchu dynasty what it is to be a county magistrate who destroys the family, and Lingyan who destroys the family. Chi Heiran was not afraid of setting the fire ablaze at all. After getting the things in his hands, he folded them both lightly and darkly and distributed them together. He also copied them to the Ministry of Punishment and sent them to Yushitai. The official suddenly felt like a light on his back. And Chi Heiran even asked in the booklet, why did the Yashitai and the criminal ministry do nothing for such a corrupt and perverted person? These things were all found in the secret places of the 7 households or in other courtyards, and all the other things in the study were found. I have searched, and even the study of the magistrate's house in Hangzhou caught fire afterwards. Is there any suspicion of murder? Please order a thorough investigation. As soon as these words came out, the court suddenly became quieter. In the Great Zhou dynasty, which official dared to say that he was innocent? Even if you are as noble as Yan Teifu, and as upright as General Yuan, you would not dare to pat your chest and say that you have a breeze in your sleeves, and beyond that, there are not a few people who can be convicted, exiled, or even beheaded. He began to consider the meaning of the emperor. Did Chi Heiran mess around with this book, or did he get the emperor's order? You know, it was the emperor's intention for Chi Heiran to go to Jinghu. In addition, Fan Zijin was making trouble and adding to the fire. Everyone was really intimidated for a while, and they were quiet for at least a few days. And in the past few days, Fan Zijin asked people to compile the evil deeds of the 7 families into storybooks and excerpts, and spread the rumors everywhere. Thanks to the open remarks of the Great Zhou dynasty, now Fan Zijin is pulling the troop to the gate of the palace to sing "I owe the king's kindness." The emperor had nothing to do with him. The matter spread like a prairie fire, because when Fan Zijin asked people to spread the matter, he also emphasized these suspicious cases. Other factions framed, the bandits acted for the heavens and added several guesses such as the ghosts take revenge, the Green Forest heroes rob the rich and help the poor. Legendary and too unsupported. Although the common people's opinions could not influence the court, it also made Chi Heiran's situation easier, and with the deepening of the investigation, Chi Heiran's suspicions became less and less. However, the emperor gradually became anxious, and if the investigation continues, the 3 adjutants around Chi Heiran will be found. It will be clear who ordered it, so he suppressed the matter, turned his eyes away and said, the situation in Jinghu is now critical, and the 130,000 rebels are the top priority. As for the case of the extermination of the 7 officials, the investigation is temporarily postponed until the Jinghu incident is completed. No one objected, because the most urgent task at this time was indeed the 130,000 bandits. Because of this massacre of officials, everyone believed that traitors should not be tolerated, so they suggested that the emperor send a large army to suppress it. However, some people think that the 7 officials deserve their crimes. Those bandits used to be ordinary people, and they murdered in anger. The 2 factions started to quarrel again, but this time the emperor didn't intervene, because he didn't make up his mind whether to suppress the bandits or recruit security this time, so he could only hold his chin and wait for everyone to come up with reasons to convince him. The Beijing officials were willing to let go of the case of the extermination of the 7 officials, but the local officials who released it did not agree. Because it's horrible. You live in Linen City without any worries, but they live outside. Where is there no bandits now? Which official has not bullied the people? Whose hands are 100% clean? Even if there are people like this, there are quite a few people offended in the officialdom, so they are afraid. Who instigated this? Since someone can guide the bandits to destroy the 7 families, can they be destroyed in the same way? Or will someone follow suit? In order to prevent such incidents from happening again, we can only thoroughly investigate to the end, find out the people behind the scenes, and give severe punishments. Only in this way can we deter those who are ready to move, and their hearts can be settled down, and they can be officials outside. Not so frightened. Chi Heiran had already fought against the rebels several times in Jinghu, winning and losing, but the difference in numbers was too great, and he hadn't fully grasped the Hangzhou garrison, so he didn't dare to let go of his hands and feet to work, only 3 times a day. The trip urged the emperor and the ministers to make up their minds quickly. If it's a war or a peace, they can't be trapped here. 130,000 people, not too many, but not too many. The two factions quarreled for a long time, and in the end it was the side of peace that prevailed. They wanted to recruit those bandits, but how to recruit them, and how to deal with them after they were recruited still remains to be seen. Discuss. Chi Heiran also knew the intention of the court in Jinghu, and the battle with the rebels slowed down. The soldiers have been transferred, but the people did not arrive so quickly. Therefore, the emperor ordered Chi Heiran to hurry up and build the fortifications, and he must hold on until the arrival of the reinforcement army. The magistrate's papers flew into the palace like a snowflake, and the emperor almost died of anger. The matter that he had suppressed with great difficulty was brought up again. The worst thing was that as soon as these papers came up, the people who had had to die in the court before became active again. The emperor suspected that there was Qin Xiang's handwriting in it. These people clamored to deal with Chi Heiran and those rebels, and the momentum was even bigger than the first time. And just when the emperor was thinking of suppressing the matter again, the news spread to Jinghu without knowing why. The 130,000 rebels knew that the emperor wanted to avenge the 7 officials, so they mobilized a large army to exterminate them. So, when Chi Heiran was still working hard to build the fortifications and waited for the court to send people to negotiate peace, a group of bandits unexpectedly attacked them. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 491. Chi Heiran cursed angrily, Lu Dehe bullied me. At that time, he conveyed the intention of the imperial court to ask for peace, and the two sides temporarily reached an intention to cease fighting, but now they even launched a surprise attack on them. Are you sure it's Lu Dehe's person? The scout nodded. In addition to the 8,000 people led by Lu Dehe, Lin Man, who is 20 miles away, also brought his people here. General, we only have 3,000 people. Even if we occupy a favorable terrain, if the opponent joins forces, we may not be able to resist, Deputy Zhong said anxiously. Although Chi Heiran was in a hurry, he didn't think they would besiege them for no reason, because Lu Dehe and Lin Man were ordinary people. Even if they became bandits now, they still respected the court and the officers and soldiers, so they must something happen to compel them to do this. Chi Heiran sent someone to investigate. As long as he knew the reason, he could still negotiate when he came to him, at least he could delay for a while. After arranging this, Chi Heiran calmed down and arranged for the defense. 1,500 people were in the front to resist the attacking Lu Dehe, 500 people were in the back to prevent someone from teetering to the left for a sneak attack, and another 1,000 people hurriedly built fortifications. Thanks to Chi Heiran for choosing a good place that is easy to defend and difficult to attack when he was stationed. There is a large rocky mountain on the back. It is difficult for even birds to gain a foothold on it, let alone bandits, so just guard against the front and left. On the right side, there is a dense jungle. The terrain is very steep. Chi Heiran only sent 50 people to stare at it. If someone really attacked from there, Chi Heiran would definitely laugh 3 times to celebrate, because that direction wanted to, it's too easy to knock down the attackers. If you poke them with a stick, they will fall down with a grunt. Although Chi Heiran only has 3,000 people, he can be sure that if he occupies this high ground, even if the golden soldiers come, he will be able to defend for half a month, let alone a group of people who have never fought before and will only rush forward or retreat peasant soldiers. Although he has the confidence to hold on to his position, he still needs to send out news so that people can come to rescue him quickly. Therefore, before the enemy was able to encircle him, Chi Heiran and Deputy General Zhong sent out 5 teams of scouts at once, and asked them to come and rescue him quickly. Go back to various places to bring rescuers. But this is not by D, and there is no brother who is the commander-in-chief to back Chi Heiran. Therefore, Not everyone is looking forward to Chi Heiran's return from danger, and not everyone is anxious about their situation. On the 10th day after receiving the distress letter, the imperial court was still arguing endlessly, not sure whether to go to war or continue to negotiate peace, and what conditions should be put forward for peace talks. Fan Zijian did not have the right to go to court, otherwise he would definitely yell at the court. The southwest and northwest armies have already arrived at Jinghu. Why did they stop? Just for the sake of that little bullshit benefit, just because Chi Heiran only has 3,000 troops, so can he give up at will? However, his full of anger had nowhere to vent. When facing Mu Yangling, he had to act as if he had nothing to do, which almost suffocated him to death. In the past, Mu Yangling helped him with ideas from time to time, but now that Mu Yangling is about to give birth, even if Li Jinghua didn't tell him, he wouldn't dare to tell Mu Yangling about these things. At this time, Fan Zijian felt that it was so important to have the right to stand in the court. Second Master, it's not good, Second Master. Yan Mo shouted and rushed in. Fan Zijian lifted his eyelids and glanced at him, and said, Master, it's very bad, tell me, what could be worse? Yan Mo anxiously said, Fourth Grandma has started, she is going to have a baby. Fan Zijian's face changed slightly, isn't there still more than half a month? Yan Mo wiped off his cold sweat and said, yes, but there was a woman who bumped into Fourth Grandma and revealed to Fourth Grandma about Fourth Master's siege. Fourth Grandma was in a hurry, Second Master, go and see Bar. Fan Zijian's face was gloomy, and he ran to the Qi mansion at full speed. Outside Zayat Hall, MRS Wu, MRS Su and MRS Wu were standing outside, arguing with Wang Ma. Fan Zijian came over with a cold face, reluctantly bowed to Wu and the others, and asked, why are the madam and the two cousins here? Wu twitched her lips and said, isn't Heiran's daughter-in-law about to give birth, so we're in a hurry to come and have a look? But this slave is so bold that he stops us outside. Fan Zijian forced a smile and said, there is a bloody smell inside. It's not good for my wife and two cousins to stay here. It's better to go back to the main courtyard and wait. As soon as there is news, I will send someone to notify. Wu frowned, and was hesitating for a while. When she heard a loud cry in the yard, Wu was startled, then heaved a sigh of relief, and smiled, it seems that the baby is born, I don't know is it a boy or a girl. Fan Zijian was also slightly startled. Seeing that Wu's face did not seem to be fake, he glanced at Su and Xiao Wu. Su was obviously relieved, but Xiao Wu just curled his lips in disdain, and Fan Zijian lowered his eyes. In the eyes, there are already counts in the heart. Suddenly, Li Shun came out and informed, congratulations to my wife, the second grandma, the third grandma, and the fourth grandma gave birth to a young master, mother, and child are safe. Li Shun looked up and saw Fan Zijian, turned his head and smiled at Wu Shi, Madam, do you want to go in and have a look at the child? Wu Shi is not willing to join in at this time, otherwise who will be responsible if something happens to the child? She wanted to enter the courtyard in a hurry before to show their innocence. The mother-in-law who offended Mu Yangling was not one of theirs. Since Mu Yangling was fine, she would naturally not move forward, so put it aside. He waved his hands, said a few vague words of take a good rest and take good care of your body and left with the two daughters-in-law. Only then did Li Shun heave a sigh of relief, and hurriedly bowed to invite Fan Zijian in. Fan Zijian said, how did your fourth grandma give birth so quickly? At that time, Li Jinghua gave birth to Xiaobao for almost a day and a night. Mu Yangling didn't expect her to give birth so quickly. It took less than half an hour from the stomachache to the time when the baby fell to the ground. She drank a bowl of chicken soup and turned to look at the baby lying on the side. It was wrinkled, red and ugly. But Mu Yangling's heart was softer than ever. She gently touched his face with her fingertips, showing a smile. Li Jinghua stepped forward to press the thin quilt for her, and said in a low voice, This kid cries loudly, and he is in good health, should you relax now? Get some sleep and take good care of your spirit. Mu Yangling nodded slightly. I'll bother my sister-in-law about the matters in the yard. That woman must ask clearly. If you can't hear the words, leave it to Zijin. Li Jinghua nodded with a smile, and Mu Yangling fell asleep peacefully. Although the birth was easy in the eyes of others, she also suffered from terrible pain and exhausted her energy, so she fell asleep deeply after she relaxed up. Li Jinghua's face darkened when she went out, and she looked at the people kneeling in the yard with some gloom. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 492. Standing on the steps, Li Jinghua looked down at them and said nothing. On a hot day, the kneeling people felt the chill rising from their hearts. Fan Zijin hurried in from the outside, only glanced at the kneeling person on the ground, and asked, "Are the siblings and the child all right?" Ling is in good health. Although she gave birth early, she is fine, and the child is fine. Fan Zijin breathed a sigh of relief, although Li Chun had said it outside just now, but now he knows from Li Jinghua that he is completely relieved. He turned his head to look at the person kneeling on the ground, and asked, "Is this the one who harmed my brother and sister?" A group of people on the ground lowered their bodies even lower, and some even trembled. Li Jinghua said slowly, "I don't know how many people participated in it, but since you can pry one person's mouth open, you can naturally pry the second person's mouth open. You are serving the fourth master and the fourth grandma, not to mention the temper of the fourth grandma. You should know the temper of your fourth master, and you should also see how much he loves your fourth grandma and the third young master. You should weigh it clearly in your heart about how to do it." A woman immediately limp and collapsed on the ground. No one knew that there must be something wrong with her. The person kneeling beside her immediately moved a few steps to the side, as if this could separate the relationship. When Kui ordered the woman to be dragged down and locked up in a room alone before going to lock up the rest of the people. This time, besides her, Gu Yu and Wang Ma, even Li Xia and Li Qiu were surrounded by Mu Yangling. When they were arrested, no matter they came from Jingzhou Mansion or they were from Qi Mansion, they were all treated equally. Seeing Lixia's little girls turned pale with fright, Wen Kui said in a low voice, "Don't worry, fourth grandma is soft-hearted. As long as you have done nothing wrong, you can be released after investigation." Li Xia nodded, thanking her with reddened eyes. Seeing that the courtyard was empty, Li Jinghua went to the flower hall with Fan Zijin. Fan Zijin asked, "What about the mother-in-law who offended my siblings? Are you recruited?" Li Jinghua's face turned ugly. Alinke was carried into the delivery room, and she committed suicide. It was because my people didn't guard her, so she found a gap. Fan Zijin's face darkened, and he couldn't help sitting upright. "How did you die?" He bumped into the rockery. Li Jinghua's face became even worse when he thought of what he saw today, and he took a deep breath and said, "Aling is the same as usual. Every day after breakfast, he will go to the small garden. After a few rounds, that woman is in charge of cleaning in the small garden." Before Mu Yangling became pregnant, she pulled the bowstring 100 times a day, and sometimes punched to exercise her body. After she became pregnant, she didn't dare to do these things anymore, but she still insisted on going out for a walk every day. Because the due date is only half a month away, Mu Yangling also feels that her body is getting heavier and heavier, and she has slightly reduced the amount of exercise in the past few days, but she still appears in the small garden on time. Speaking behind the rockery, the voice was not loud, but she could hear clearly. The fourth son was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of bandits in Jinghu Lake, and now his life is hanging by a thread. I don't know if the fourth grandma's baby is a boy. If not, the fourth son didn't the incense burn off. Mu Yangling is not an idiot. This is such a classic Gongdu Zai to Kiao section. She kept telling herself in her heart that they just wanted to stir her up and have an accident with her child, but she still couldn't help it with a pain. I couldn't help worrying about Chi Heiran, who hadn't heard from him for half a month. Even though Mu Yangling quickly controlled her mind and told herself not to think too much, her stomach still hurt, and she only felt a slight wetness in her lower body. Mu Yangling knew that something had happened to her. She made a decisive decision, and at the same time told the little girl behind her to run to the next door to call Li Jinghua, and at the same time told Guyu to pull the woman and the girl out. Guyu knew that girl. She was a fool, the daughter of a cook in the big kitchen, but she had a bit of stupid strength, and she helped carry water in the yard and so on. Obviously, the woman couldn't find anyone for a while, so she took this girl as her appointment. Mu Yangling knew that this woman either had a will to die, or she was sure that she would not be able to touch her. Seeing Mu Yangling standing there steadily, the woman was slightly taken aback when Li Shun stood in front of her on guard. She was about to do something when she heard Mu Yangling ask, "You said fourth master is here, Jinghu was surrounded by bandits, is it true or not?" "Fourth grandma," Li Shun said anxiously, "this woman is talking nonsense, don't listen to her nonsense, fourth master is fine." Mu Yangling didn't look at Li Shun, but only looked at the old woman. The old woman breathed a sigh of relief, with a faint smile on her lips, and when she raised her head, she said with compassion, "It's true, fourth grandma, who is in the house, we all know, but you are the only one who hides it. If you don't believe it, just go out of this garden and ask any servant, not only we know, but even the people outside have heard about it." As soon as the mother-in-law finished speaking, Li Jinghua brought someone over in a hurry, and Mu Yangling turned around and said, "Sister-in-law, I will leave this person to you. Be careful, don't let her die, let alone let her escape already." The mother-in-law's face changed drastically, and only then did she realize that Mu Yangling was just delaying time, and turned around to hit the rockery. Guyu reacted and hugged her waist, and the two of them fell together, which stopped her after committing suicide. Li Jinghua immediately had her tied up, and then Mu Yangling supported Li Shun and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm afraid I'm going to give birth." Only then did Li Jinghua see bloodstains in the skirt of her lower body, and her face changed drastically. She was afraid that Mu Yangling would have a difficult delivery like her, so she didn't dare to move a little, so she could only ask someone to lift the spring stool to lift him up carefully. "Go to Zayat Hall, and then ask people to call all the people in Zayahua court to kneel for punishment, because they are afraid that someone among them will threaten Mu Yangling and the child in her belly. In this Qi mansion, the safest place is Zayat Hall, because the people in Zayat Hall are all brought from Jingzhou mansion inside and out, and they are old people with the highest loyalty, so Li Jinghua put Mu Yangling's production here." Li Jinghua originally wanted to lock up the woman temporarily, and then interrogate Mu Yangling after she gave birth safely, but who knew that the woman who went to detain her relaxed her vigilance when she saw her sitting on the ground dejectedly, and added the man's hands were tied, so he didn't pay much attention, he just pulled her to lock her up, but she walked more than 10 steps outside, and she directly bumped into a woman, and hit another rockery with a bang dead. Li Jinghua was afraid that Mu Yangling would be worried, so she didn't tell her about it, but she wanted to tell Fan Zijin about it. With such a clumsy method, this woman probably didn't think about surviving in the first place. Li Jinghua blamed herself, "It's also my fault that I didn't explain it seriously and let her take advantage of the loophole." Fan Zijin lowered his eyes and passed the suspicious person in his heart, but he became even more puzzled. The first thing he suspected was Wu's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but the behavior of the three of them at the gate of the courtyard did not seem to be fake, so who else would use such a method against Mu Yangling besides them? "Sister-in-law, there are too many doubts about the younger brother and sister, and it is inconvenient for me to intervene in the matter of the back house, so I leave it to you to investigate. If you need my help with outside matters, please let me know, and I will ask someone to investigate." Fan Zijin originally wanted to take over and investigate in person, but he is at his wit's end right now, and it's really hard for him to intervene further in the affairs of the Qi mansion's inner house. Li Jinghua naturally agreed without any problem.